Glad to see Mike Demand is talking about it and uploading videos. We've been having a lot of conversations in the background, in the comments section, amongst people that have been following it for quite some time, the case. Now, I want to propose to you just where my mind is this morning. Maybe you can call it progress. But it has to do with everything that we've come to learn about the situation and people's behavior leading up to June 15th, 2021, the day that Candace and Dawn both called 911 and reported Summer missing. And I think as it happens naturally, we get to examining one or two things and our minds we get tunnel vision to a degree, and we don't think about the incorporating, everything that we learn. It sometimes becomes one or the other. If it's this, then it can't be that. And it's just the nature of reverse engineering these situations. Now, with that said, do you remember Dawn's coworker who Dawn went and fired, I don't know, the day before or the day of? JLR, Bullhorn Betty, and Molly Golightly went and did an in-person interview with him, and he had all kinds of interesting things to say about Dawn's behavior, substance abuse. So let me get to the meat of what it is I'm making this very short video about. And I want your comments down below and start the conversation, and we'll get this started. So Dudley Ajan is his name. And Dudley talked about something, I believe the 15th was a Tuesday, if I remember correctly. Nonetheless, the day before Summer was reported missing, Dudley noticed Dawn in a very personal moment, in shock, seemingly, according to Dudley. I'm not quoting him, I'm paraphrasing, of course. But in a nutshell, he walked in on him, they were working together on a job site, and he had a look upon his face while he was on the phone that he was receiving some news that was affecting him. We don't know what that exactly is. But last night, as I listened to Chris McDana, and I trust Chris McDana based off of what he is in a former detective. He's still a detective, not in the force, of course, but what he's involved with. He's got no reason, and he'd be less likely just to make things up. Sometimes people get a little too carried away with where they are thinking, and pretty soon the way they portray it, you're portraying it as though it was a fact in place of, or because you're trying to elevate where you're going with the things that you know. Chris wasn't doing that. Chris last night said that he takes as credible, as I'm interpreting, that DHS, CPS, Child Welfare Services, had a history not only on 110 Ben Hill Road, but were coming or did come the day before Summer was reported missing. And Chris McDana says the day she went missing. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to get all of this verified. I wonder how he comes to know this. How Chris McDana knows this to the point of talking about it in a factual light. Now, of course, he says allegedly, and he doesn't know. It sounds like he might not know for sure. It's not like they called him up and told him, or he's not part of that a loop of information with the investigation. But I give a lot of credibility to it because it came out of Chris McDonagh's mouth. I'm not saying that you should take it as fact, but when you take a look at what Dudley Ajan communicated to us about the things and the odd behavior that stood out to him about Don Wells the day before, that would account for having to make some serious charges or some serious decisions, let's say, about how you're going to deal with the situation that is coming, that's affecting in the background. And that, my friends, has everything to do with Jeannie, Mary Hartman, Don's panty sniffing history, his perversions, combined with his substance use of hard drugs, whether it be the rock or different things that he gets his hand on. See, there's a clique right there in his neighborhood with the mathematics, we'll say, different hardcore substances. And I'm not talking about Andy, even though they've admitted to cannabis use, which is not where we're going with all of this. So let's fast forward to the day of June 15th and the trip to the water hole, the horse pond. Excuse me, there's some people cutting the lawn in the background or leaf blowers. But anyway, let's fast forward to June 15th. They're walking into this situation, we could say premeditated. We know that they have a history of, I should clarify, they allegedly have a history of boundary crossing with children, contributing to the delinquency, buying them alcohol, substances that you don't need to be, putting in kids. Candace had this inappropriate relationship with Hunter, who at that time was 14, 15. Let's fast forward, and we know the interview and what it looks like combined with the milk jug photo. There's a strong possibility, because of what we all recognize as abusive behavior by way of Don and the allegations and the probability that he was abusing Summer. All right. It forced him, because of DHS that was already coming there to talk to them about something. And think about, one angle, one factor. We know one factor with information coming in, that was Sherry Delaney and Hunter's mother, and they all consider Candace to be a pedo, a PDF file. Apologize for the words. You know where I'm going with that, but we need to keep this YouTube friendly, that's all. Ad revenue friendly, excuse me. So anyway, this combined issue going on in the house, specific to mainly Summer, but really it affects the entire family because they ended up taking the kids away. So we're on June 15th down at the horse pond. There's a strong possibility that Candace was sedating her 5-year-old sippy cup. She's swimming away. There's even videos of Summer splashing around in the water with Hunter. There's a few short videos. But there's a time period in there. Where they suggest, Summer, with Hunter talking about Summer going underneath the water. Well, he brought that up for a reason. Now, I don't know why you can overanalyze it till the cows come home. He did say it, and it's very interesting, and he has deceptive language. I, too, believe Hunter knows a lot more, but, he doesn't know he knows necessarily. He's trying to distance himself from this situation. No shade on him whatsoever. But what I'm getting at is that while Hunter was out with them, he's not old enough or wise enough to recognize that he's probably being used, and he's being used in that scenario as maybe an alibi. Where I'm going with all of that, and I'm tying that back into him being dropped back off and them taking this photo, this 3:30 photo, the milk jug photo with Summer sleeping on cold ass milk jugs that they just got out of the grocery store from, piled up in the back, and she is laid and sprawled out with their coat on in June, a very warm day. You're not, and zipped up to the top. You know, take that away. It's such an uncomfortable position to, and she's looking like she's knocked out. It looks like somebody got roofied or somebody. There's something off about that photo. Nobody can really put their finger on it, other than we'll recognize it when we get more information. Then we'll hate that photo and never want to see it again, type of thing. That's the feeling I get from it. It seems like it's a photo, because it's a victim, a photo of somebody who's been sedated, somebody who's been knocked out, not physically, but chemically. Like they've had too much to drink, for example. And there's discoloration and blotchiness on her skin. I'm not overemphasizing. Don't even, it's not obvious, but the more you look at it, the more that it can stick out to you. Not even asking you to look at it. It's just an odd photo. And who's taking photos like that while they drive? Okay. Shouldn't you be busy driving with your mom, Grandis, in the passenger seat? And it was Grandis in there, okay? And she's trying to hold the camera and take video for her. You know, she's thick in all of this. She's just as much of a predator in an asexual manner than everybody else. She just doesn't have the rap sheet her brother Warren does. You know, there's no limits. She's engaged in activities with fighting with her own daughter over a conquest, Jose Roman, you know, in front of her boyfriend. Like, who the fuck are you? Who does that? Like Saddam Hussein, Uday Hussein? Like, you know, it's such a bizarre, shady situation like that. This is all playing out in front of the children. There's no boundaries. There's no privacy in that sense, and they don't care. So what I'm getting at is that when you combine everything, it seems that perhaps there was a lot more premeditation, or there's a possible premeditation here, because if in my mind, if DHS was already lined up to come the day before or 2 days before and that day that she went missing, you know, that's a lot of pressure on the family. And in my opinion, there's got to be a connection there. And it would have had to have been professionals probing Summer about her life there. And Don was not going to go down and is not going to go down for his behavior. He's got a long history of getting away with and not getting away with it. All right. It caught up to him too. It doesn't mean it stopped at all. He now has his own little girl to carry out his fantasies on. I know that's disgusting, but Don's sleeping with his daughter naked in bed with his wife right beside him. Think about how much is wrong with that scenario in his dungeon down there. So, strong possibility that whatever Don was upset about with Dudley Ajan had to do with CPS and CPS coming and the things that CPS wanted to talk about. Now, there's a good possibility that the reason that they were coming was the problems and issues that they were having with Hunter's mom and Sherry at the time, because I'm not saying they're the only ones. There's other people that were probably reporting them. So Grandbun and Sherry and Hunter's mother all considered Don and Candace to be deviants, yet they let their kids go over. Well, it's after the fact. I'm not trying to distract, but that's the point. So all of the questions that would have been raised when they get in their little back and forth fights, and they end up calling CPS on them, DHS in this circumstance, or DCS. Set up a meeting. Dawn is going to be up shit creek because of the SA that's he's enacting onto his daughter that's going on. He got caught in that sense. And the last thing that they need, because he knows that he's probably, and there's a good chance that he's going to lose his kids, you know, it was a sacrifice. They had to make a decision. Dawn's just that psycho. They're not going to go to jail because of this SA. If Dawn goes to jail, where does that leave Candace and the kids? So there's all kinds of things that could really, there's all kinds of things running around in my mind, like they're all linked in that sense. So people want to focus on her having an accident while swimming, and the reason why we're here is that she had to, because of the dry drowning or bumping her head on a rock, they chose to hide it instead of reporting it as an accident. So as a standalone, isolated reason for this behavior and cover up, I don't buy it. But that doesn't mean that she was not administered something or given a sedation that's going to take a little while to really take effect and knock her out. Like the time that she's out there swimming, she's got her bathing suit on, and by the time she gets out there swimming, maybe she's already groggy. She's awake and functional, but by the time she gets back into the truck, they go up to get their groceries. All the milk comes out, drop Hunter off, and by that time, this is just a little bit of running around. Why the hell is she should be so wound up? She's had food, she's been out, had fun. This is the middle of the morning, all of a sudden, just after lunch. I mean, listen, she's knocked out on a bunch of cold milk jugs. She should be rocking and rolling. But listen, driving around, toddlers, 5-year-olds, I'm not trying to, I'm saying it's a possibility that she was just tired and fell asleep. But I don't buy the fact that she's tired and falls asleep like she does. By the way, it seems staged. If I remember, they're in the back of Grandbun's vehicle, her truck, right? There's no child seat, not even a booster seat for her back there. She's strapped in, and she's really strapped in, conked out, knocked out on these milk jugs. There's something up with that. Something happened. And they had the opportunity to do that. In fact, they were already... Anyway, I won't get too sidetracked, but what I'm saying is, it's all looking a little bit more clear. I've got to press pause while this... No matter what happened at the swimming hole, what I'm saying is the reason that Summer got gone and nothing seems to flow, especially when it comes to the timeline, from the time they really drop Hunter off till that 3:30 p.m. phone, or that milk jug photo and that little video that Grandis and Candace took supposedly on the way between Hunter's and 110 Ben Hill Road. So keep the incident at the pond just isolated in your mind there for a second. Dawn's SA is a big factor. Everything combined, it makes so much sense. Dudley Ajan witnessed the conversation from Candace on the day or 2 days before. I think it was a long weekend. No, it wasn't. I think it was a Monday. The day before she was reported missing. Like something shook Dawn. What would be shaking? CPS coming for a surprise visit the next day. to talk to you all about these recent allegations about inappropriate conduct with your own child. They're going to start to probe all of this. And of course, Don is guilty AF, and he was doing it, which is going to wind him up in prison. And that's something that made him move. They have to take care of this issue. They can't have Summer telling people about the SA that's going on. So they give her something to make her go to sleep, and she's never going to wake up again. And they take her down to Van Hill Road and dispose of her with the pigs. The only thing left over would probably be her teeth. But they could deal with that at a later date. I mean, that's cold AF. I'm not a cold AF type of person like that, but it didn't have anything to do with Summer bumping her head. There's a whole problem here with the timeline after the 3:30 p.m. milk jug photo. And everybody who's trying to figure out what's going on has to take their information from the suspect, who is just fabricating, making it up. You know, the way Candace describes how she gets home, or their activity when they get home, is such bullshit. And we all know that. There's not a lick of truth to it. But what does she have? She has her alibi crazy grandma to validate whatever story she's going to give the police. And they match it up, and she screwed it up. And she screwed that story up. Again, this all circumstantial. It all happened. But we're trying to get to the skinny of what really happened to Summer Wells. I think we're getting a good idea of it that we're 22 minutes into my video. So everything had to, what we're saying at this point in time in 2026 is that this situation is premeditated. There was no incident, no accident where they panicked and had to cover up, because CPS was already onto them. There's already a problem with some of the information that they were receiving. They couldn't risk Summer talking because she was at the point of becoming very descriptive about Don's and maybe other people, but we don't need to incorporate them yet. We need to focus on the people in our immediate circle here. We have all of the information and statements to really be here. We're not pulling this out of thin air. The more that I get to know Don and Candace, the more that it wouldn't surprise me. And they're just the type of people. They're just their level of psychopathy is that where that is a strong possibility here. Ronnie Lawson and the guys down at Hawkins County Sheriff Department want us to ask Don and Candace, especially Candace, a question. And it's, why did she wait till 6:30 to call 911 when she knew that her daughter was missing? So she says, just after, 4 o'clock, say. What happened in that time frame between 3:30 and 6 o'clock? That should be information that they're more than willing to share, especially Candace. But they're super secretive about it. That's where I believe this Van Hill Road farm ties in. They were disposing of evidence. Candace was saying that she immediately jumped in her truck and started driving all around, here, there, and everywhere, up and down Van Hill Road. She puts herself in the vicinity. It's quite possible that she just put Summer in the truck and drove her down to Fred Hills, got him to lead the way down to his uncle's, and they were going to dispose of something down there. And of course, it's so strong because the one breadcrumb that we have is the tie between that red truck that was initially said as a vehicle of interest. Imagine somebody with almost that identical truck, okay, guys? It wasn't an identical truck. The Toyota Tacoma red with the ladder racks. They waited years before they just went right down Van Hill Road, which is what Ben Hill Road comes out on, Van Hill Road, but down a piece, down the highway a piece. There's an identical vehicle up there at Fred Hill's uncle's house, and they never even came forward. I mean, it's not like it's so hard to believe that they wouldn't have heard that in the news and been questioned, or it's, said something earlier on, but finally it came out because of what the breadcrumb they dropped with saying about that in the latest, information drops from the TBI and FBI about, this individual in that Toyota Tacoma up there. Years. They didn't, they've been asking people to come forward, the owner of the red Toyota Tacoma. You're just down the road, and they've been asking since day one, and yet you just go on about your life. That seems so hard to believe. Well, geez, I've got a red Toyota. Like, you just call up, say, I've got a red Toyota Tacoma with a ladder rack like that. So we don't know what the connection is. It's not saying that the individual there is responsible for this. Of course, Fred Hill is related to the guy, and Fred Hill lives at the just down Ben Hill Road, the dead end Holler Road. All right. So, and he's involved and was involved at that time with all kinds of criminal activities revolving around certain substances. So there's a connection. So in my mind, it's a real possibility that even Grandis is in on this. And she's a part of it because her alibi is really what's screwing over the situation. Even though it's her, Candace's alibi is so unbelievable. But the way that everything happened seemed set up. They were planning this. Whether Hunter was used as a last minute alibi to add some innocence to what was going on. But even the story that old Grandis had about, I gotta go get my leg medication because the boys were all jumping on my knee. She's passing that blame off. It's a bullshit excuse. No, your knee is fucked up and you ran out of medication. That's so hard to believe. Okay, that you've got this gimp leg, and then that day specifically, you decided to go at 7 in the morning and go first thing like that when you've got all the, a schedule, a routine to keep yourself with the kids. It's a bizarre thing. It's almost like you were looking for something to have a reason to go and be in there in the first place. And Hunter is just another little addition on with that to give you an alibi while you're out doing innocent things as you wait to administer or carry out your plan in order for Summer to go to sleep and never wake back up again and take her down to the pig farm on Ben Hill Road. And it has everything to do with the SA that Don was carrying out. If Don's in jail, there ain't no more money coming in and your lifestyle's affected. Everybody's is affected. Your family's torn apart, and that's your last ditch effort. You sacrifice Summer because you couldn't have her talking. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below.